Welcome back to From the Pages of the Wrestler, the March 1972 issue, part of the Victory Sports series. The cover sets a dramatic and slightly theatrical tone. Mil Mascaris dominates the presentation, framed under the banner of This Is Your Life, immediately signaling biography, myth-making, and reflection. Secondary headlines pull the reader in different directions at once, teasing a past clash between Dory Funk Jr. and Pedro Morales, while also promising something more provocative with the phrase wrestling's sensuous wildcat. Even before opening the magazine, the reader is told that this issue will mix legacy, controversy, and personality without hesitation. Opening the issue, the first pages immerse the reader in the unmistakable advertising ecosystem of the early 1970s. Joe Weider-style bodybuilding and fitness ads take center stage, promising transformation through discipline, supplements, and mail-order programs. The language is confident and aspirational, filled with guarantees of strength, masculinity, and control. Coupons, prices, and before and after rhetoric dominate the layout, reminding the reader that wrestling fandom at this time is deeply intertwined with physical culture and self-improvement fantasies. More fitness and training ads follow in quick succession. Courses promise karate skills, muscle definition, weight loss, and strength development. The tone never wavers. Change is always possible, and it is always available through the mail. These pages slow the reading experience, forcing the eye to linger on dense blocks of copy and order forms, grounding the magazine firmly in its era. The contents page lays out an issue packed with strong personalities and dramatic framing. Bill Apter's familiar voice leads off with, "Here's what's happening, baby," followed by official ratings, correspondent reports, first-person confessions, and emotionally charged feature headlines. The phrasing throughout the contents is confrontational and dramatic, promising danger, rivalry, and revelation rather than simple reporting. Editorial and publisher information follows, anchoring the magazine institutionally. Stanley Weston's name appears as publisher, with Robert J. Thornton listed as managing editor. Staff and contributor credits reinforce that this publication sees itself as an authoritative voice within the wrestling press, not a casual fan circular. The first major editorial section arrives with, "Here's what's happening, baby," written by Bill Apter. The column adopts a conversational insider tone, blending news, gossip, and observation. Territory movement, wrestler behavior, crowd reactions, and ongoing angles are discussed fluidly. The voice feels personal, almost conspiratorial, as if the reader is being let in on what's really happening beyond official announcements. Another wave of advertisements interrupts the narrative flow, this time promoting outdoor careers, conservation work, and government-approved training programs. These ads promise stability, purpose, and a different kind of physical engagement. The juxtaposition is striking. Wrestling drama sits alongside career paths rooted in nature and service, all sold through mail-in coupons. The official wrestling ratings section follows, imposing order on the sprawling wrestling landscape. Rankings are broken down by major governing bodies and regions, including the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the National Wrestling Alliance, the American Wrestling Association, Pacific Coast Wrestling, Japanese Wrestling, and women wrestlers. Headshots accompany notable names, turning the ratings into both a scoreboard and a gallery. The presence of multiple regions reinforces how fragmented and territorial the business remains at this time. With reports from our correspondents, the magazine shifts into localized storytelling. Chicago mat action and other regional scenes are documented through match reports, controversial finishes, referee decisions, and crowd responses. The writing emphasizes immediacy and atmosphere, capturing wrestling as a live, volatile experience shaped as much by audience reaction as by scripted outcome. One of the issue's most distinctive pieces arrives with Little Bruiser reveals why. "I'm scared to death of mixed matches," written in a first-person style. The article blends confession with bravado. Little Bruiser discusses the dangers inherent in mixed matches, focusing on size disparities, unpredictability, and real physical risk. Anecdotes involving opponents like Ivan Koloff and El Medico heighten the sense of threat. The tone is defensive but honest, framing fear not as weakness but as survival instinct. Advertisements return again, reinforcing the magazine's rhythm. Conservation careers, forest protection programs, and veteran-approved training reappear, all presented with official language and government seals. The repetition builds familiarity, making the ads feel like part of the reading experience rather than interruptions. The emotional core of the issue deepens with the match that must never be made. Focusing on Chief Jay Strongbow and Jim Valiant, this feature is written as moral drama. Former friendship, personal trust, and emotional betrayal form the backbone of the story. The article emphasizes reluctance rather than anticipation, framing the potential match as something dangerous, not just physically, But spiritually, quotes and recollections are woven throughout, with the sleeper hold becoming a symbol of both technique and restraint. The feature on Man Mountain Mike opens by playing directly against appearances. From the outside, he looks like nothing more than a brute force, a walking slab of muscle, whose only purpose is to overpower whatever stands in front of him. But the article immediately undercuts that assumption, framing Mike as a man driven by something far less obvious. His secret ambition isn't about domination alone, it's about recognition, respect, validation. The story paints him as someone who understands how the crowd sees him and quietly resents being reduced to size alone. Match by match, he's not just trying to win, he's trying to prove that there's more inside him than what people expect when they first look his way. Bobo Brazil's vow reads like a declaration carved in stone. The article is written with fury at its core, recounting the damage done and the insult carried forward. Brazil doesn't posture here, he promises. The language emphasizes inevitability rather than revenge for revenge's sake. This is about justice, pride, and unfinished business. Brazil speaks with certainty, not rage, framing his pursuit of the Sheik as something that will happen simply because it must. The tone makes it clear. This isn't bravado. This is a man who believes the story doesn't end until he writes the final line himself. This feature thrives on dysfunction. Tarzan Tyler and Luke Graham are introduced not as partners bound by trust, but as opposites forced into the same corner. The article relishes the tension, describing constant arguments, clashing egos, and barely contained resentment. Lou Albano's presence looms large not as a peacemaker, but as someone skilled at turning hostility into results. The bizarre irony is that despite hating each other, the team succeeds. Wins pile up even as the cracks widen. The piece frames their partnership as a ticking time bomb, effective, volatile, and doomed the longer it's forced to exist. The Ann Casey feature is unmistakably a product of its time, leaning heavily into language that blends admiration with spectacle. The article emphasizes that Casey commands attention the moment she steps into a ring, not just because of appearance, but because of intensity. The nickname Sensuous Wildcat is used as both branding and provocation, but the text makes a point to underline respect earned through toughness and presence. Opponents underestimate her at their own risk. The article walks a careful line between allure and legitimacy, presenting Casey as someone who understands the image placed upon her and uses it as a weapon rather than a limitation. This is the epic centerpiece of the issue. Spread across 9 pages, the Mil Mascaras feature reads like a cinematic origin story. It traces his journey from obscurity to international sensation, framing each stage as another rung climbed through discipline, risk, and spectacle. The article emphasizes speed, agility, and innovation, presenting Mascaras as something wrestling had not fully seen before. His mask is treated not as a gimmick, but as a symbol of mystery, identity, and control. Match after match, territory after territory, the narrative builds him into a figure larger than geography. By the end, the piece positions Mil Mascaras not just as a star of the present, but as the future standard by which young wrestlers will be measured. Don Morocco's feature is written with self-awareness and humor. He openly admits that performance drew him to wrestling as much as competition. The article leans into his personality, framing him as someone who enjoys the spotlight, the crowd, and the theatrical side of the sport, but it's careful not to dismiss him as unserious. Morocco understands that charisma only works if it's backed up in the ring. The story balances confidence with ambition, presenting him as a rising name who knows exactly who he is, and isn't afraid to say it. The match between Pedro Morales and Dory Funk Jr. is framed as something almost mythical, known only to those who were there. The article emphasizes rarity and circumstance, reminding the reader that not every great match happens under bright lights or in front of massive crowds. Sometimes history unfolds quietly. The writing treats the bout as a collision of styles and legacies, preserving it not through footage, but through memory and testimony. The scarcity of witnesses only adds to its power, turning the match into a story passed along rather than replayed. The story continues across multiple pages, allowing the tension to breathe. Training, manipulation, and outside influence are discussed in detail, including the role of the Grand Wizard. The pacing is deliberate. The magazine wants the reader to sit with the conflict rather than rush toward resolution. As the issue winds down, back-issue advertisements appear prominently. Past editions of The Wrestler and Inside Wrestling are promoted with precise pricing and ordering instructions. The emphasis on collectability reinforces the idea that wrestling history is something to be owned, archived, and revisited. The final pages feature a bold promotion for the most wanted back issues of any sports magazine, including references to girl wrestling issues from the mid-1960s. A warning notice in order form accompany the ad, closing the issue on a note that blends curiosity, controversy, and commerce. The Wrestler March 1972 is dense, dramatic and unapologetically of its time, it treats wrestling as spectacle, morality play, physical culture, and mail order economy all at once. Every page reinforces the idea that wrestling is not just watched, it is debated, feared, admired, and collected. See you next time. Farewell from the Empire State.